When it comes to 2016's live-action Suicide Squad movie, about the only thing almost everyone could agree on, at least the only positive thing, was, more Harley Quinn, please. About the only negative thing was, Jared Leto sounds just insufferable to work with when he's playing supervillains. But I digress. We couldn't agree on literally anything else. Whether or not the movie was bad, why it was bad, who was responsible for it being bad or good. We couldn't even really agree on the whole Jared Leto Joker thing. Nothing, except more Harley Quinn, please. And Harley's actress, Margot Robbie, still had to become a producer in order to get this made. Or, probably more accurately, in order to get this made instead of however many other Harley-centric projects were competing with it for air. Allegedly. I have only an outsider's perspective on whatever the hell Warner Brothers has been up to these last few years, and that's been enough to cause its own minor existential crisis. If we're lucky, we might get the true Hollywood story behind it all in plus or minus 20 years. Meanwhile, Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of one Harley Quinn was the last movie I saw in theaters before lockdown came to my city. And thank God, because if it had been some crap like Sonic the Hedgehog or Jumanji 4, I'd be even more pissed off. And the lockdown would have driven me even more insane. On top of everything else, I'd be burdened with the unimaginable guilt of having missed Birds of Prey in theaters, which is something all of you should be, right now. And I'm going to tell you why. Harley's journey to the big screen is refreshingly straightforward, since she's not even 30 years old yet, and I can sum it up in a sentence. By creating a character for the Joker to talk to, Batman the Animated Series co-creator Paul Dini accidentally made the same mistake Geordi LaForge made in that one episode of Star Trek, where he told the computer, create an opponent capable of defeating Data, and it spit out a sentient Professor Moriarty. So while she lacks any diegetic superpowers, Harley shares the Joker's on-again, off-again ability to break the fourth wall, and the ability to walk around in what I can only describe as a bubble of cartoon physics. She even does the, ooh, a penny gag in this movie, and gets away with it. This is how she can, say for example, keep up with a high-speed car chase on roller skates. She is a cartoon in a cartoon world that has gradually learned to take itself seriously. It took almost 15 years of comic books for her to achieve the fullness of her powers. But by 2016, Harley was already striding through situations that other characters needed to be trained assassins, or samurai, or crocodile wrestlers to get through unscathed. With little more than a baseball bat, a revolver, and those entirely too hot pants. Oh, and a psychiatry PhD and a love of fucking with people. Or, as Robbie herself put it much more diplomatically, quote, Harley needs friends. Harley loves interacting with people, so don't ever make her do a standalone film, unquote. This, she apparently told the Warner Brothers brass. And they listened. So, thank you for your service, Margot. That's more than some of us can achieve. To quote further, she's got to be with other people. It should be a girl gang. I wasn't seeing enough girl gangs on screen, especially in the action space, unquote. And there is no more prestigious girl gang in the DC universe than the Birds of Prey. Originally created in 1996 for a one-shot by Batman family writer Chuck Dixon, the Birds didn't really come into their own until around 2003 or so, when writer Gail Simone codified the team of Black Canary, Huntress, and Barbara Gordon. The former Batgirl, then known as Oracle, patron saint of hackers everywhere. For years, while they were pretty much ignored by the wider entertainment world, the comics grew to incorporate pretty much every female character in the DC universe with any name recognition. And some without. My mom, for example, got a real kick out of the news that Lady Blackhawk had been pulled forward in time by some big dumb crossover event I don't want to go into right now. But point being, Lady Blackhawk was a character my mom read about in comics as a kid. And there she is. The Birds of Prey. And while Harley has remained shackled to the Suicide Squad, and its Jungian shadow, the Secret Six, also created by Simone, the Birds of Prey have drawn her closer to their orbit as she has shifted more towards anti-heroism. Gotham City remains a hive of scum and villainy, but some motherfuckers are more villainous than others. And the Gotham City vigilante community knows this better than anyone. That community suffered on film due to its constant reduction back to one crazy rich guy who keeps waiting until the end of his trilogies to get any partners in crime fighting. Back in 2003, the network, now known as the CW, greenlit, aired, and then cancelled an entire Birds of Prey series after only one season. It even had its own Harley, played by Mia Sara from Legend. Sorry. We, of course, had a Catwoman movie, but whether that's even set in Gotham remains an open question to this day. And Barbara Gordon, in her guise as Batgirl, was supposed to have her own movie by now. Written and directed by the Avengers' own Joss Whedon. Yeah, turns out we dodged a bullet with that one, folks. Just like we did back when the WB turned down his Wonder Woman script. Alas, Barbara Gordon could not appear in this film in any capacity. It falls to Harley to bring this flock together in the most Harley way possible, with impulsive acts of violence. So our team includes Dinah Lance, the Black Canary, daughter of a long-dead Gotham City vigilante just struggling to get by. Huntress, in her late 80s mob daughter out for vengeance persona. And Harley's fellow canon immigrant from the animated series, GCPD detective Renee Montoya. All four are professional women, ensnared in some kind of patriarchal hierarchy that holds them in nothing but contempt. All four are frustrated in their attempts to escape that hierarchy by the abbreviated entitlement of entrenched power. Personified, for most of them, for most of the film, by up-and-coming Gotham City gangster Roman Sionis, aka Black Mask, and the criminal empire he's building to replace the old money, seemingly real estate-based empire that his family kicked him out of, probably for being such a dickhead. In one sense, this whole movie is a neighborhood-level sociological study, in keeping with director Kathy Ann's previous film, Dead Pigs. Because Harley breaks Roman's driver's legs, Canary gets promoted from lounge singer to replacement driver. Because Roman's now broke-leg driver was snitching to Montoya, Canary inherits that job as well, after some prodding from her still-functioning despite everything conscience. Montoya is trying to build a case against Roman, trying to pin him to the smuggling in of a diamond that was once owned by Huntress's mob family. A diamond that is then stolen by teenage pickpocket Cassandra Cain, because Roman's henchman, Zaz, did not trust his new driver, Canary, with such precious cargo. He doesn't trust Canary in general, but then again he doesn't seem to trust anyone in general, and he seems incredibly jealous that anyone might be sharing his precious Roman. But that's a whole other thing. Focus on Cassandra Cain, who is out enjoying a nice pickpocketing stroll through the neighborhood, partially because Canary took pity on her and told her to stay away from the shitty home life we could all hear even from downstairs. The Diamond MacGuffin is the weakest link in all this, but the ambient fun generated by the entire rest of the movie is more than enough for me to let it slide. Thank God at least once we don't have to deal with an apocalypse. It's fun to watch all the gears of Gotham City's east side grind against each other. It's fun to watch good actors incarnate some of my favorite Gotham City characters. And it's fun to see those characters, who are usually relegated to supporting roles, finally get a spotlight to themselves. Sometimes literally. If anything, I wish they'd done more. And given that this is a Warner Brothers film, for all I know, they did. It's entirely possible that there's a whole other hour of this movie that was either never shot, or even if it was, that we're never going to get to see. And that whatever qualms I might have with this movie would be addressed by that missing third of it. Like, you could argue that all of the Birds of Prey are still technically supporting characters in Harley's story, and I would say, well, that probably a function of Harley being played by one of the credited producers. And that just makes me wonder, what kind of shit system are we living under that you have to become a producer in order to make a girl gang movie? I mean, we got this, and what? Death Proof? And this is what I meant by the whole existential crisis bit back there. Like, I don't know how many of my complaints are even close to legitimate, and how many of them are just made out of complete pants-shitting ignorance. How many complaints were the product of someone not considering something, and how many were the fault of some douchebag who makes 9 figures and gets his blood replaced every month like Keith Richards? Some idiot who doesn't even like movies, but by virtue of their position decided that this one had to be 2 hours max in order to maximize screenings per theaters per day. Making some number on some spreadsheet go from red to black, which is, of course, the most important thing anyone can do. Far more valuable to our society than making a decent Birds of Prey movie. The fact that one survived all the rigors of that system to actually exist is, quite frankly, miraculous. Because after all, this is Warner Brothers. And while I could run through their entire history of mismanaging or micromanaging their big franchise movies, I'll save that for another time. And, in keeping with our new theme around here, focus on the positive. It's going great. This is not hard at all. Speaking of douchebags, Batman comics have tried and failed to do something interesting with Black Mask since they created him in the 80s. But Roman's never really stood out in the massive and honestly too famous crowd that is Batman's Rogues Gallery. Even in the video games, the most interesting thing anyone could think to do with him was to have him turn out to be the Joker in disguise. So the fact that they cast Ian McGregor in the role, and seem to have just let him go nuts with it, is the best thing that's happened to old Romy since he became a cult leader during No Man's Land. For me, that's because this Black Mask is a better villain for the Trump era than the actual I Can't Believe It's Not Trump Patty Jenkins and Jeff Johns were creating at the exact same time, over in Wonder Woman 84. Unlike that 45-year-old boy, Max Lord, Roman Sionis is a legitimate son of privilege, whose quest for more is just a bald-faced end unto itself. As they so often are. What you see is what you get, and what you get is a spoiled brat. There's no saccharine 11th hour flashback to his traumatic childhood that's supposed to make us have some kind of sympathy for him. His tragic backstory isn't even dramatized, but take it from somebody who knows, it's about as tragic as finding out your parents occasionally talk shit about their friends. Even after, gasp, shock, spending a nice night at their friend's house. To which they, of course, dragged you and forced you to play with their friend's weird, moody son, with whom you had nothing in common. The kid doesn't even have a Super Nintendo. And no, I don't want to watch old Zorro movies. Why the hell would I do that? We're 9. What? Fuck family, he says to a gangster whose territory he's honing in on, before doing a complete 180 and going, oh, we can make our own family. A lot of movies these days are about found families, made families. So much better than biological ones because you can choose who's in them. But of course no one wants to make a family with Roman because he's a grasping social climber and everybody knows it. And he knows that everybody knows it. And this only reinforces his delusion that the whole world revolves around him. Which in turn reinforces his need to take everything personally. These are my things, he shouts when he doesn't get what he wants. But then again, everybody is a thing to him. Nothing more than their utility in the moment. And sometimes not even that. If he'd gotten a TV show instead of a nightclub, he'd probably be a lot happier with himself. And also on the fast track to becoming President of the United States. So that's our villain. The second generation of Gotham City's upper crust, grown so bored that they're attempting to join the post-Batman generation of gangsters. In Batman v Superman, Batman fatalistically compared criminals to weeds. And while he was really depressed in that moment, even for Batman, this is what he was talking about. As any Sopranos fan will tell you, at length, the RICO Act didn't destroy the mob, it just made the mob change tactics. Maybe get a little more suburban. Even in Batman movies that pretend to be set in something like our world, i.e. the ones that name drop RICO cases, go out of their way to illustrate that the immediate result of Batman's and Gordon's, and sometimes Harvey Dent's, destruction of the old mob is to create a vacuum that an entire new generation of assholes with different criminal organizations rushes in to fill. The better class of criminal. These Jokers and Harleys and Killer Crocs. Consuming all the headlines and all of the Batman's attentions. Creating space for the Roman Sionuses and Victor Zazes to work in the shadows. Especially when the one member of Gotham's ruling class who knows what noblesse oblige means is off gallivanting around the world with his Justice League. But without him around, we get to see something we rarely see. Gotham City in the day. Not the looming skyscrapers of downtown, or the decorously evacuated ports where you can have fights with giant monsters. No. This is the East End, home of the working poor, the Saturday markets, the bodegas, and the crappy, greasy spoon hole-in-the-wall restaurants run by the Taiwanese grandpa you never had. The Gotham we saw in BVS looked washed out and gray because we saw most of it through Clark Kent's perspective, reflecting his, purposefully engineered by Lex Luthor, but still, view of the Batman's morally dubious effect on his city. But here, though, we see the East End from Harley's perspective, and to her, it's alive. She brings it alive with her presence. A bustling metropolis, full of ordinary people living out their lives with no shadow of the bat hanging over them. A perspective granted by her new life, free of both the Joker's influence and the government's subcutaneous neck bombs. With all the radical possibilities that freedom offers. Until every lowlife on the East End hears that she and the Joker have broken up, including Roman Sionis. Now, I don't know how things went down in Robbie's native Australia, but up here, in America, girl gang movies fell out of fashion, to the degree that they were ever in fashion, once the concerned parents of America stopped worrying their children might do crimes, more or less, and started worrying their children might be gay. Or, even if they were straight, that they might find sex to be pleasurable. And find out that having pleasurable sex would not immediately condemn you to hell. And it's not that the concerned parents of America don't still occasionally worry that a movie might come along to make their kids do crimes. It's just that all the energy for that got temporarily sapped in the lead-up to 2019's Joker movie. And all that did was help Joker make $1 billion. So, great job there, everybody. Maybe the concerned parents of America saw that and went, maybe we should rethink our tactics here. Or maybe they ignored Birds of Prey because you have to be a comic book nerd to know what a Birds of Prey is. And, as usual, Warner Brothers did precious little to educate the civvies about this. They left it to people like me, but I don't do hype train stuff, Holmes. You have to pay me. Like, a lot. And who the hell releases an R-rated comic book-based action comedy in the middle of February anyway? Oh, right. Fox did it with Deadpool. But only after a year-long marketing campaign, so both pervasive and weird that it rated its own Wikipedia page. Birds of Prey, meanwhile, had 2 trailers, a panel at Brazil's Comic-Con, and a couple of videos on the WB's YouTube. Which is about as traditional as it gets in this 21st century. Did the WB even want this to make money? That would have seemed like a paranoid conspiracy theorist question to me last year, but here we are. Yeah, I'm bitter. I really like this movie, and the fact that not enough people saw it is the most disappointing thing about it. I'm resisting the urge to go on one of my usual long, rambling socio-economic rants about why not enough people saw this movie, because I know the real answer is COVID. Duh. But also, the sad fact is that a stunning amount of people still go to these comic book movies expecting the characters to be role models for children. Either their own or the adult-bodied children around them, some of whom they probably call friends. Some are still deluded enough to believe that being a role model should be a fictional character's highest function. Probably because fictional role models are better than real ones. Less likely to disappoint you. At least theoretically. In reality, these characters can disappoint people with something as simple as being in a film they don't like. Or wearing actual real person clothes to a fight scene, instead of fishnets, or capes, or booty shorts that are more booty than short. Wait, that doesn't even make any sense. Of course they're short. That's how you can see so much booty. Why did I even put that in there? Fuck. Now I'm breaking the fourth wall. Damn you, Harley! So as usual, I'll be the bigger man. And discuss why I think this movie, quote-unquote, underperformed, whereas something like, say, for example, Wonder Woman succeeded. And the reason I'll employ has to do with one of my favorite pet peeves, aspirational branding. The Wikipedia for this is too boring and gets too far into the weeds of, like, fake marketing math for our purposes, so I'll give you my own definition. Aspirational branding is any kind of branding that seeks to sell not just the product itself, but the image of success having the product is supposed to convey to other people about you. It's the reason why there are no ugly people on TV anymore. It's why Bruce Wayne drives not just a sweet Benz, but a sweet Benz that they showed off at their experimental stage in 2013. So Diana of Themyscira, by her creator's own admission, is designed to be the ultimate aspirational character. We're all supposed to aspire to be as brave and courageous and hot and good with languages as she is. And even if we can't, kind of hard to, given the whole favor of the Greek gods thing, we can at least aspire to look as cool. And to maybe get a sweet job at a prestigious museum, before going home to our Watergate apartment and our Chris Pine-played boyfriend, who will, of course, let us pick out all of his outfits for him. Contrast that with one Harley Quinn. Still aspirational in her own way. This is America, where we all, regardless of our gender, aspire to get away with being an asshole in public. But she lives in a shitty apartment over a restaurant in a depressed section of one of the worst cities in the multiverse. A city synonymous with crime way before Tim Burton turned it into a German expressionist nightmare hell. A city full of institutions that will not hesitate to turn on any one of their members at the drop of a hat, as we see with all 4 of our adult characters. And really, Cassandra's not exactly being protected or served, so you can throw Gotham CPS in there too. Huntress's whole family got butchered by its so-called mob allies back in the day, when mobsters still talked about honor. Respect. Montoya's betrayed by her unjustly promoted boss, and her snitching ex-girlfriend at the DA's office. Harley's betrayed by the entire criminal underworld after they find out she's lost the Joker's favor. As is Canary, once her snitching to Montoya becomes apparent. But Canary's also carrying around a generational betrayal on her shoulders, thanks to the death of her mother at some unspecified point in this fractured universe's past. Canary's not exactly an aspirational figure either, professional singing gig aside. And seeing her here, reduced to driving Mr. Zaz and Mr. Sionis, after years of seeing her languish in the thankless role of being Green Arrow's girlfriend, almost breaks my fucking heart. It's supposed to. That way, I cheer all the harder as I watch her climb out of this hole that the movie universe started her out in. Just like I was supposed to do, and did, unlike some people, with movie Batman. And I do, because Canary needs friends too. And because, even in the relative darkness of her journey from lounge singer to street-level vigilante, I see signs of hope. The idea that Black Canary as a title passed from mother to daughter started out as a way for DC Comics to have a Black Canary in the 40s fighting Nazis, and another one in the 80s founding the then-modern version of the Justice League. Like a lot of other attempts to straighten out their own continuity, this accidentally improved things by making Canaries a generational story. And just like in the comics, she worked with the GCPD. And whether she wound up marrying a private detective doesn't really come up, but we do know she had a daughter. A daughter who, unlike any of the other characters in our cast, except for Montoya, but she's Montoya, whose characterization owes as much to televised cop dramas as it does to any cop drama within a superhero universe comic book that might have been written by, say, Greg Rucka. But the point is, unlike everybody else but Montoya, Canary comes to this hero shit naturally. She literally can't help herself. When she sees superhero cliche 003, the gang of toughs lurking in an alley, assaulting somebody, she comes right in for the save. And it's awesome. Even Harley deserves a save. Or do we not believe in rehabilitative justice? Well, some are easier to rehabilitate than others. And anyway, why not save Harley? Her presence animates the whole film. It animates Gotham City itself. She makes the city fight for her. Sometimes literally. Amusement Mile, where our climactic battle takes place, is a desolate ruin on the outside. But inside, like the rest of Gotham, it's alive. Its floor is pristine enough to skate across. Its attractions functional enough to aid our heroines in a fight scene. Harley makes the whole damn place fight for her and her newly formed team, and the most anyone notices is a shoe change, because they can't break the fourth wall. And this is a metaphor for how all these comic book stories work, really. If you, the artist, filmmaker, whatever, animate them with enough belief in their raw, crazy, fun, cool power, they will in turn animate everything around them. They'll certainly brighten up some people's days, let me tell you. If we subscribe to the idea that these characters are supposed to provide moral instruction for the youths, then that is the moral the life of Harley and Quinzel teaches us. Or one of them, anyway. I don't subscribe to that idea personally, but some of my fellow millennials have kids now. And they should all show their kids this film. It's the fun, lighthearted, uplifting superhero adventure romp people have said they wanted ever since Zack Snyder made his first Superman movie. Just with, a girl gang. So yeah, Birds of Prey, 4 stars. See it if you haven't. Buy the fucking Blu-ray. Okay, 3.5, but only because I'm convinced that pieces of it are missing. Prove me wrong, WB. And release the Snyder Cut while you're at it. And thanks for watching this, everybody. If you like the show, hit the like button and the subscribe button. And if you really like the show, then consider supporting it on Patreon, like the fine people whose names I'm about to read to you right now. Mr. Hootie Dean, Detective Steve, The Aftermovie Diner, and Stu G. Next time, hell, I don't know.